Today we are officially starting my daughter's quilt that I am making her from the Flowering Gum quilt by Ruth Devos. I hope I said that correctly. She's an Australian designer and I'm really excited because my daughter's bedroom is Australian themed. And so this is my first attempt at a quilt ever. Now, a few videos back, I gave my spring sewing plans, and this was at the very end of the video if you watched all the way through. I am attempting to sew a quilt for the very first time. I've never made a quilt, even though I've been sewing for so long. So I'm excited to test my abilities with a new skill as far as quilting goes, but I've chosen one that isn't exactly like a normal standard quilt. It's more of like an artistic quilt. So I'm excited to see this process, but I know it's going to be a huge undertaking beyond what I already do for a full-time job and garment sewing. So I'm trying to give myself a 1 block a month schedule, and then maybe during summer break I'll do a few more. Ideally it would be so cool if I could get it to her before her 2nd birthday, but that's in a few months. So that's about 6 months away. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish the whole quilt in 6 months. I've never done the whole like long arm quilt thing or I've never done a quilt. I've cut quilts up to make garments, but I've never actually made a quilt. So I'm excited to document this process. And so we are starting with block number 1. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I did start this block because I wanted to see how it was going to come together. And so I feel like I'm confident enough to actually document the rest of it. So this is like the start. This is like a 1/4 of the block. So we've got 1/4 of the way done, and I'm going to document the other 3/4 here on this video. I did document all the cutting out, all the ironing, all the tracing of the interfacing to do this quilt. And the designer, like, she has some YouTube videos, but I think it's more or less like you've got to pay for access to some of the videos. So me, it was kind of like watching some of her videos on YouTube and then just kind of figuring it out per her directions that came with the quilt itself, the quilt pattern. And so I was a little hesitant to share the first couple steps because I wanted to make sure that I was going to even be able to do this, because quilting is so intimidating to me. Garment sewing isn't intimidating to me, and I know that sounds so backwards. I know most people start with quilts and then probably get into garments. Or vice versa. It's the same thing like with crocheting and knitting. I'm going to learn. That's one of my goals for this year, but I don't know how to do those either. So this is a new experience, and I'm excited to share the process and the highlights and the lowlights, and if it even goes well.
The very first step for this quilt pattern is tracing each one of the blocks. There are 16 total, and you're going to trace the square and every single line that you see below it, every letter, every little detail onto interfacing. So the glue side is faced down, and then I'm tracing on top. And again, I'm tracing every single detail, every line that you see, every letter that you see. I am tracing each one of those things. And the designer also recommends notching every line so you know exactly how they match up, because there are a ton of curves in this pattern. Before I even started working with the fabric, I went ahead and cut a tiny little swatch of each fabric to name each color. And when I named each color, this is going to help me organize so that when I'm cutting up each block, I know exactly what it's referencing when it says pale green versus light green versus pale pink versus light coral, coral, dark coral, all the different things. So what I plan on doing is using these post-it notes. I'm going to write the color, and then I'm going to pin it onto each one of the fabrics, so that way I know exactly which one is which and I don't get confused. I did notice after stalking the designer both on her Instagram and her YouTube that she also labels her fabric. So this is just one tip I'm taking from the designer that I saw. I don't recall it being in the pattern instructions, but I saw a photo where she had all of her colors labeled, and I thought that's genius. I repeated this process for every color. I am not going to show myself doing it for every color because that would just be so monotonous. So you're only going to see it for these first few colors.
All right, I've got them pre-labeled. So obviously I said when I did my video for my spring plans for sewing that these colors are not the same as what the designer recommends. So she definitely recommends more vibrant, bold colors, but I bought the watercolor woven pack, the Fableism watercolor woven pack. I know they're sold out from where I bought it from, but and I can't even remember the name of the quilting store, to be honest, but I did the best with what I could. It's going to be more of a, it's not going to be as bright. It's going to be more earthy, but that's kind of the vibe of my daughter's bedroom. I'm making this quilt for her. I know I've mentioned that at the beginning of the video, but these are more of the tones we have in the room anyways. So I'm really excited to see it all come together, even though it's not exactly like what the designer displays on her website. So it's going to be very much toned down version, but I'm excited to see it all come together. So let's get started. Okay, the reason why I think that this is going to take me an entire year to do outside of garment sewing is because the first step is to trace everything. And so you guys saw that at the beginning of this video, but now I have to cut everything else out that I traced and then find everything that goes with it. So I don't have my background fabric with me. It's more of, it's actually like this color I chose. So I could technically cut into this one, but I'm a little scared too because I don't know which one is which. These are the leftover fabrics from the pack of watercolor wovens that I did not choose to use for this because I felt these tones fit better for the description. But I have a background color. I have like 4 yards of that, or 4 meters of what it called for. And then I still need to, so like N, this piece right here, is my light green. So now I'll take my light green and I have to cut out this piece and then cut it out from here. So I'll show you that process. It seems like it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm excited. I know this isn't a normal quilt, and this is probably really a lot harder than what a normal starter quilt is, but I'm excited to see it come together. Luckily it's so, there's a lot going on, so even if I make a mistake, I feel like it's gonna be hidden.
Now that I'm cutting into the interface, I decided to cut them out based on their colors groups. So I'm starting with all of the background colors, and then I went and set those aside since I didn't have that background color fabric. And then I moved in the direction that the pattern designer suggests, starting with that light green. So you'll see here I'm going to cut out all of the background pattern pieces first, and then move to the colors. Midway through my cutting, I changed my mind and decided I wanted to tackle the smallest pieces first to make sure I didn't lose them. So I am going to start out with a dark coral first, which is the pieces P and J. Now I did catch a YouTube tutorial on the designer's YouTube page, but then I went back to try to look for it to link it for this video, and it disappeared. So in the video, I saw her, and she also explains this in the directions, but I'm such a visual person that I like to see what someone's doing. That's why I love the sew-alongs and tutorials. So in the video, she glued on the interfacing pieces onto the correct colors, and then she marked 1/4 of an inch all the way around each interfacing strip or piece. So these are strips, but I know not all of the pattern pieces are strips. So she marked 1/4 of an inch around each pattern piece, and then she cut it out afterwards. So I'm going to begin that process for every single pattern piece on this block, and I will speed it up. Also, just a random side note in editing, I do realize that my fingers look tremendously weird when they're cutting out, and that is the former athlete life, having played basketball in high school, college, and professionally. I can't tell you how many times I've jammed a finger, so I notice that some of my fingers bend weird, so I'm sorry if you've picked up on that as well. I just have weird fingers that have been jammed so many times that they're like double jointed. And before I put the music back on, this is when I decided to remark all of my pieces with a dark marker so I could actually see them on the fabric. The entire process of cutting out each pattern piece while also ironing on the interfacing to each pattern piece collectively for block 1 took me roughly 2 hours. So it was a lot of work, but it looks so pretty when you're laying it out on top of each other like this, and I can't wait to sew it up. Obviously, I'm missing the background pieces from this initial layout, but I did cut those at a later time, and you will see me sew them all together.
So as you can see here, I've already done like a quarter or maybe even a third of the block. And so really it's just piecing it all together, and then when it's finished, it will all be this way. So yeah, I've made a good dent, but we still have a lot to document. So let's get to it and start sewing. The next step in the directions say to stitch O to P. So I already know this is the straight edge, the side, and what the designer recommends when you cut it out is to make notches. And so you can see here when I made these notches, I did it in pencil, but in some of the pieces you'll see that I actually went through and redid the notches with Sharpie. So some of the pieces I redid, some of them I didn't. I just think it was because it was a lighter fabric, so I didn't want to like ruin it, or I had already basically ironed the interfacing onto the fabric, so I didn't want the Sharpie to shine through. So I'll do my best to match these up, but basically we'll attach them and then just keep sewing along until this whole thing is together. So it's been like 30-ish minutes since I first originally filmed, and it's coming together quite quickly. So it's not as intimidating as it seems. I think I'll probably be finished with this block in like 2 hours, 1 to 2 hours. So yeah, it sews up actually pretty quick. So maybe I will be able to get it done by her second birthday. That's a fun thought. All right, so here's a good example of what I'm saying with the notches matching up. So The next step says to connect stitch F to, so stitch F to G together. And you can see where I made the original notches. So I just have to, when I'm pinning them, match those notches up and then sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it's kind of nice because the interfacing acts as a guide to get that straight line or whatever the line is, the artistic line. So yeah, I'm just pinning those together and it's coming together really quickly. It is looking so amazing. I'm loving it. I only have 5 more steps to go and then I'm done with my first block, and I'm literally not joking. I've only been working on it for an hour. So I know I had like a little section done before, but this is coming together so quickly. I love it so much. Okay, so that definitely did not take as long as I thought it was going to be, which now I'm really excited because I do think that I'm going to be able to knock this one out of the park by the time it's my daughter's birthday in 6 months. So, are you ready for the final reveal? Oh my gosh. She is so cute. I love it so much. Again, it's a bunch of piecework. I would say the longest part is just the prep. It's prepping all the fabrics, it's prepping all the interfacing and tracing. The sewing of this came together so easy. I would totally recommend this quilt pattern. I'm only on block 1. So let me know if this is a series you would enjoy watching as I complete the whole entire block. I probably won't film every block, but if this is something that you enjoy, please let me know below. If you liked and enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share. And until next time.